On the day I returned to the country, the staff said there was a problem with the checked luggage. They led me into a room strewn with red roses. Lucas dropped to one knee, holding the ring in his hands, his eyes full of devotion. The Gu family erupted in cheers, shouting for me to marry him. Everyone expected I would sob and say I do. After all, Lucas was the idol I had chased for 5 years before finally winning him over. But they'd all forgotten. 3 years ago, at the promotion review, Lucas accused me of plagiarizing his junior's paper and reported me for drunkenness that allegedly caused a medical accident. I was thrown out of the hospital like a dog and then beaten by the relatives who arrived after hearing the news. With nowhere to turn, I had no choice but to go abroad to make a living. Yet now, old Master Gu, Harold, told me, after you left, Lucas spent every last penny to settle the medical incident for you. He's been waiting for you to come back, all these years he's held your photo and wept. I said nothing, I only stole a glance at the marriage certificate in my bag. At the accident caused such an uproar back then, you had to give him some time to sort things out, right? Why did you storm off in a huff? Lynn, because you left without a word. Lucas has been inconsolable these past years, he can't eat or sleep. He nearly turned the whole city inside out looking for you. From the moment I walked in, Harold kept dragging my hand and jabbering on. After years apart he'd aged a lot. The sharp look he once had, the one that used to sneer I wasn't good enough for Lucas, was gone from his eyes. Still, his words were as cutting as ever. What he intended as praise of his son's devotion sounded only like reproach directed at me. To be honest, hearing the name Lucas again felt somewhat unfamiliar. 3 years is enough to blur everything. Besides, it was a past unworthy of mention. Hearing their words, they probably didn't know I was already married. I brushed Harold's hand aside, my expression calm. Uncle, Lucas and I broke up 3 years ago. I don't understand what you're trying to tell me. The Gu family suddenly looked at me, disbelief written all over their faces. They hadn't expected me to react this way. After all, I had once gone after Lucas regardless of everything. I even threw away the job offer from Peking Union Medical College and chose the city hospital where he worked, all just to take better care of him. Being a doctor is a grueling profession, still, I would prepare 3 meals a day for him. To ease his burden, I volunteered to assist in his surgeries, even when I could barely stand after leaving the operating room. I even put my own research under his name to help him get promoted faster. And to protect my career, I stayed up night after night until I grew increasingly haggard and pale. But when Lucas accepted my proposal, none of that mattered. From then on, returning to the office, there was always a coffee on my desk. A note stuck to the cup was full of his sweet words. When troublesome patients harassed me, he would stand up and handle everything. With the wedding approaching, he would sit at the computer with me to pick venues, and he would help plan our honeymoon. When I was at my busiest and most exhausted, he would argue with the director for my sake, just to free up time to accompany me to try on wedding dresses. He watched me spin on the stage in my gown with nothing but tenderness in his eyes. Even the shop assistants said they'd never seen a couple as sweet as we were. At that time, I felt I must have accrued great virtue in a past life to have met him in this one. Until a female doctor named Chloe was transferred to the hospital. From that day on, Lucas stopped mentioning the wedding, and there was no more coffee on the table to perk him up. At first I assumed he was simply busy taking on a new subordinate and had forgotten for a while. I didn't disturb him until the caterer notified me that the wedding venue needed Lucas himself to inspect it, and I found myself knocking on his office door. When Lucas found out, he said impatiently that it was such a hassle and told me to go in his stead. But when I arrived, the salesperson handed me 2 contracts. One was mine, the other was Chloe's. Both listed Lucas as the husband. My hands holding the papers broke out in a cold sweat. I hurriedly tried to reassure myself it was just a coincidence of names. But when I returned to the hospital, I saw my colleagues each holding a wedding candy packet. They crowded around Chloe, wishing her a happy marriage. And Lucas was leaning against the wall, watching the girl in the center of the circle with gentle eyes. At that moment, the scalpel felt as though it had been plunged into my heart. The pain was so intense I couldn't breathe. He turned his head and saw me with reddened eyes. There wasn't a trace of pity on his face, only a cool remark, "Already signed so quickly?" I glanced over the crowd and slapped the document onto his chest. "Which one are you talking about? Mine? Or Chloe's?" Hearing my accusation, Lucas frowned. "Take it home if you have questions, I'll explain everything. Everyone's in good spirits right now, don't go spoiling it with talk like that." At that moment I couldn't help but laugh out loud. Talking nonsense? Killing the mood? I never imagined that the person who, a few days ago, had been calling me his wife under the covers would now stand across from me and humiliate me. Perhaps my laugh hurt him. A hint of contrition flashed across Lucas's face and his tone softened. "My tone just now wasn't great. Don't read too much into it. I have another surgery to do. Once I'm done I'll come to your office." "Okay, Lynn?" He said this and lightly patted my arm. I brushed his hand away, wiped the tear from the corner of my eye, and turned to leave. Lucas raised his hand as if to call after me, but he held back. In the office, I stared blankly at the casebook in my hands, as if I couldn't recognize the characters. I don't know how long I waited before a knock came from outside. "Come in." Lucas handed me a cup of coffee. "I brought this for you. I heard you have another surgery later, thought it might help wake you up." I glanced at the blank cup wall and gave a faint hmm. "Chloe is a junior of mine from university. Her family is pretty traditional and pressures her to marry. A couple days ago her mother threatened to die and begged me to help. I didn't tell you because I was afraid you'd overthink it." I sipped my coffee and listened quietly, then slowly asked, "So, did you register the marriage?" Lucas hesitated for a moment, then nodded. Worried I'd rush to interrogate him, he hurried to explain, "Don't worry, once I go back and meet her parents I'll get a divorce. Chloe isn't clingy, she agreed to it." Lucas spoke sincerely, but I still couldn't accept it. After all, this was just too outrageous. Seeing that I still hadn't responded, he took a pair of rings out from his white coat. Kneeling on one knee, he stared straight at me. "Trust me, Lynn, the only person I love is you. I'm sorry for all the trouble lately. Once this is over, I'll give you the grand wedding you deserve." Before I could refuse, Lucas slid the ring onto my ring finger. At the same time, he put on his own. I looked at the glittering diamond ring and felt a weight lift from my chest. Maybe, it's really just helping out. But after that, he never wore the ring again. He even found an airtight excuse: he needed surgery. He and Chloe came and went through the hospital like a real married couple. Meeting rooms, offices, corridors, even the cafeteria, they were inseparable. They were the hospital's star-crossed lovers, and I was the ex-wife my colleagues talked about. Some even spread rumors that I was the failed other woman. I was about to set the record straight when Chloe showed up. She had her hands in her pockets and walked toward me step by deliberate step, provocation in every stride. "Dr. Lynn, Lucas is my husband. I hope you'll stop paying him any attention from now on. He told me everything, that you forced him, that's why he got together with you. No wonder a love that was licked up like that is so fragile. Be sensible and quit." The fingertips under my fist had already pierced flesh, but my expression remained calm. "Miss Chloe, I have no intention of resigning. You are not my superior and have no authority to fire me." Chloe didn't get angry but laughed, pulling her hand from her pocket and folding her arms. "Oh? Really? We can make a bet on how you'll leave this hospital." I ignored her and escorted her out. That same day, I told Lucas about it. Who would have thought that not only did he not believe me, he turned around and berated me. "I've told you I'd divorce her, so why won't you stop? You even made up such an outrageous excuse to lie to me. She forced you to quit? Logically speaking, it would make more sense if you had forced her to leave. Lynn, don't make a scene. Right now I just want to focus on my career. It's fine if you don't help me shoulder things like before, but at least don't make things worse for me, okay?" I hung up, took the ring off my ring finger, and tossed it into the cabinet. Lucas was right, focus on the career. so I'll put matters of the heart aside. Over the years, because I'd been putting my energy into Lucas, my own career had stalled. I pushed myself with everything I had, preparing for the annual medical qualification exam. In the days that followed, Lucas didn't contact me, and I stopped reaching out to him. Occasionally we'd pass in the corridor, but we merely brushed past each other. We were like two strangers, not even colleagues anymore. Finally, the day of the medical qualification exam arrived, and the director slammed his fist on the table in fury. It turned out Chloe and I had submitted papers that were word-for-word identical. Facing the accusations, I wasn't nervous, because my ability was far superior to hers. Yet not a single person present believed me. They handed me a phone, and I saw that Chloe had been posting daily updates about the progress of the paper. You could say my colleagues had witnessed the paper's entire birth. In an instant, countless curses and insults rained down on me. I pushed past the crowd and fixed my gaze on Lucas at the back. He deftly avoided my eyes. That single gesture confirmed my suspicions. The only person in the world who knew my computer password was Lucas. In fact, the password was even his birthday. With the evidence concrete, the dean demoted me. I paid him no heed. I brushed through the crowd and walked straight toward Lucas. I turned his head back and asked, "Lucas, do you also think I copied it?" I clearly caught the hesitation in his eyes, but in the end it resolved into a single word, "Yes." I let out a light laugh and released his hand. When I turned away, my eyes were so red they looked like they could bleed. Seeing me like that, Lucas couldn't help but call my name softly. But I didn't stop for a step. I walked straight out of the meeting room. From that day on, my colleagues gradually began to distance themselves from me. No one wanted to be associated with a plagiarist or a homewrecker. I wasn't upset. I simply buried myself in work, shuttling between the office and the operating room. A demotion was nothing. I'd climb back up slowly. Until the day the director threw a letter of complaint in my face. Someone had reported that I performed surgery while drunk, causing a medical malpractice. In that moment, I felt as if my nerves had snapped. It was plainly spoken words, so why couldn't I understand a single one? "Director, you must be mistaken. This patient had hypertrophic cardiomyopathy from birth. When they were brought in, they were already beyond saving." He said nothing, only produced the witness, the anesthesiologist from that surgery, Chloe's close friend. "Director, she's Chloe's friend. Chloe and I have long been at odds. It could very well be her framing me." "Enough." Lucas pushed the door open and came in, his look toward me full of loathing. "What feud? It's obviously you who hate her unilaterally. Who hurt her?" "Lynn, I thought you were merely jealous of her, but I never imagined you could go this far. Do you know how serious the charge of fabricating medical disputes is? I never imagined you would bet with a patient's life. You're not fit to be a doctor. Far less fit to be my wife." I froze in place, my throat as if pierced by 1,000 needles. Long after, I managed to speak with effort. "Lucas, do you really think I'm the kind of person who would kill a patient out of jealousy?" Lucas's chest heaved violently, his gaze was dark, if not. I saw it, the refrigerator at home is full of liquor bottles. That one sentence nailed everything shut. The director signed the dismissal papers on the spot, and my colleagues spat on me with their words. I stumbled out of the hospital like a ghost, and before I reached the gate I was kicked to the ground by a relative who had come after hearing the news. "You're doomed. Why did you kill my son? Who told you to drink?" The woman kicked me with her heels one after another, raising her hand to slap me hard. My vision blurred little by little, but I still saw Lucas standing in front of the examination table. He glanced at me indifferently, then stepped into the elevator. Security stopped the woman in the end, but it was already too late. My wrist was badly injured, not completely ruined, but I could no longer perform high-precision surgeries. With the medical disturbance ruining my reputation, my career in Jing City was completely cut off. Harassed repeatedly by the family members, I fled abroad. Before boarding the plane, a message from Lucas popped up on my phone. "What does the ring in the cabinet mean? Are you still sulking? It wasn't that I refused to help you last time, I just wanted you to reflect a bit. Go to another hospital and become a good doctor, stop acting out. Snapping back to the present, I looked at Harold and said seriously, please stop bothering me. Lucas, I, and your goof family have nothing to do with each other. Harold seemed not to hear and continued, Lucas's surgery just finished, he's on his way here. Forgot to tell you, after you left, he was transferred to Sheha. He's now their youngest director, making $1 million a year. Miss him now and you'll never meet someone so good again. I couldn't help but laugh when I heard that. I lifted my hand to show the diamond ring on my ring finger, forgot to mention, I'm already married. Also, this ring cost Lucas 2 years' salary. At these words, the room fell silent. The first to react was Lucas's sister, Penny. She sneered, how could you possibly be married? Didn't you say you'd only ever acknowledge my brother? That ring was probably bought wholesale for $1. Maybe if you lick it it'll taste sweet. Harold caught on too and frowned. Lynn, is this the sort of thing to joke about? Don't try tricks like that. Lucas has a big heart, he's already forgiven you. If you just nod in a little while, you'll marry into our Goo family and never worry about food or clothing again. If that kid hadn't been hopelessly infatuated with you, I wouldn't even want you as a daughter-in-law. Listening to these cutting words, I felt nothing stir inside me. I simply glanced at my watch and watched the time pass. Ethan should be arriving soon, I had to hurry out. His identity couldn't stay at the airport for long. But when they saw my movement, they immediately sneered. You were so stubborn just now, pretending you couldn't wait for Lucas to hurry up. Ugh, just thinking about having a sister-in-law like that in the future pisses me off. I still miss Chloe. I don't even know why Lucas dumped her. Penny crossed her arms and looked at me challengingly. She looked exactly like Chloe had back then. No wonder they hit it off. But none of that concerned me, I had to go. Sorry, everyone, I have something I need to take care of. Excuse me. With that, I turned to leave, but I stopped short when I saw someone standing dazed in the doorway. Lucas's white coat was still stained with blood, it was clear he'd rushed over straight from the operating room. He had indeed lost a lot of weight since I last saw him. It seemed that these 3 years had not treated him well. Lucas let go of the doorknob and lifted his hand to touch my cheek. The gesture was so gentle, so tentative. Lynn, I missed you so much. I brushed his hand away, my tone cool but polite, long time no see, Lucas. The light that had finally sparked in Lucas's eyes went out in an instant, his voice trembled a little. Why are you speaking to me like that? Are you still mad at me? I shook my head, my tone growing increasingly impatient. Lucas, what would I be mad at you for? Stealing my paper to give to Chloe? Hearing that name, a flash of panic crossed Lucas's face. What I did was wrong, but I only did it to help you. Chloe told me you drank before the surgery and that if I didn't do this she'd call the police, so I smiled knowingly, so that was the truth. Helping me? What did I do wrong that you need to help? You should have told her to go to the police back then, I wouldn't have been ruined by an idiot like you. You don't have to apologize to me, because I won't accept it, belated justice is bullshit. Lucas, I'm not someone who lives in the past. 3 years have passed, whether love or resentment, it's all over. A flicker of confusion crossed his eyes, he didn't understand what I meant. I couldn't be bothered to explain, and started toward the door, but he grabbed my wrist hard. The old injury flared up, throbbing faintly. I can't get past it. Lucas suddenly raised his voice, making the people around startle. Perhaps realizing his lapse, he softened his tone, I can't get past it. Lynn, can we start over? He took a ring from his pocket, bigger and more glittering than the last one. You didn't like the one I gave you before. This time I got a bigger one, could you? No, I said calmly. Sadness welled up in his eyes, but before he could speak, the Goo family couldn't hold back. Lucas, why are you being so humble? If she turns you down, it'll be her loss. Yeah, brother, why must it be her? She's not even some rich heiress. Enough. Lucas turned and snapped, then glanced at me cautiously. When I didn't react, he relaxed. I brought you here to buy time, not to muddy the waters. I will only ever marry her in this life. Everyone fell silent. Harold stomped off in a huff. Lucas paid him no mind and turned back to me. If you don't like her, we can go pick someone out together at the venue. You're overthinking it. My hand can't wear it anymore. Lucas, I'm married. Hearing that, Lucas swayed, and the ring in his hand fell to the floor with a crisp sound. Married? How could that be? It's only been 3 years, how could? Don't joke around, okay? How can you make such a big thing as marriage into a joke? Are you lying to me? You only said that to make me mad, didn't you? Right? Right? Looking at the urgency and sorrow in his eyes, I felt very strange. I had never seen him show that expression to anyone. He used to be like an unattainable cloud, looking down on everyone. How could he ever be so humble? Lynn, I already accepted your proposal. Why did you go back on your word? Hearing the words, go back on your word, I smiled and shook my head repeatedly. In Lucas's eyes, I had always been the one at fault, whether in the past or now. Lucas, I went back on my word? Wasn't it you who treated marriage like a joke and left me to marry someone else? Lucas's body stiffened. He reached out and grabbed my arm, explaining urgently, shortly after you left, she and I divorced. Nothing happened between us, you have to believe me. I shook his hand off, all patience gone from my eyes. Enough. I don't care about that. My husband has been waiting for me a long time, I should go. As for you, I'm rather traditional, I wouldn't marry a man who's been married before. With that I slammed the door. He chased after me, grabbing my wrist. Lucas, have you had enough? Perhaps my voice was too cold, he recoiled as if electrocuted. He murmured an apology. I ignored him and walked straight ahead. His footsteps came behind me, each one heavy. I sighed. Let him be, if he wants to follow, let him follow. I never realized before how persistent he could be. I opened my phone and saw several missed calls. Damn, Lucas is going to make a scene again. I was about to call back when I saw a man in a beige trench coat walking slowly toward me, a delicately carved little doll hanging from his chest. He wore a mask and a hat that almost hid his entire face. Yet from his bearing and presence, you could tell he was no ordinary person. Zhang Yang was exuberant, so much so that the little doll in his arms seemed to be carried by a gust of wind. Sis, quick, take a photo, how is this person more of a star than a star? He even looks handsomer than Best Actor Ethan. The little doll in his arms is so cute, his mother must have saved the galaxy in her past life. People turned their heads wherever he passed, their eyes as if fixed on his body. And in his eyes there was only one person. Wifey, why didn't you answer my calls? I was worried sick. His voice was 99 parts aggrieved mixed with 1 part playful coaxing. Under everyone's stunned gazes, I stood on tiptoe and rapped his head hard. Didn't I say not to bring Tom? He's still so little. Ethan was about to speak when Tom let out a soft, mushy sound. Mom. This was Tom's first time speaking. I was so shocked I froze. Ethan seized the opportunity and quickly shifted the blame. See? He insisted on coming. I lightly thumped Ethan's chest and laughed. Ethan kept his hand over his heart and slowly moved it to his face. Wife, I miss you so much. Though I couldn't make out the man's face, I could hear the smile behind his mask and his tone. My ears warmed slightly. After all these years, Ethan's mouth is still as sweet as honey. If his fans knew that the usually stone-faced Best Actor Ethan is actually a clingy little dog in private, their eyeballs would probably fall out. Seeing me like this only put Ethan in an even better mood. He came over and looped an arm around my waist. Let's go. You haven't been home in so long. I had Aunt Shin make Sichuan food especially to whet your appetite. I had just taken a step when a loud voice sounded from behind me, "Lynn." Wow. Tom was so startled by the sound that he burst into loud sobs. I hurriedly picked up the pacifier that had fallen to the floor and gently coaxed him. Ethan pulled a small bell from his pocket and jingled it in front of him. "Tom, look at this, little bell, ding ding ding." "Wow." The child cried even louder. I snatched the bell away, gave Ethan a hard whack on the head, and said irritably, "I told you this trick doesn't work, and you still." "Give Tom to me, I'll soothe him." Ethan, feeling wronged, tugged off his suspenders and handed Tom to me. I took him carefully, gently patting his body. "Tom, there, mommy's here, mommy's here." Tom's crying gradually subsided, turning into quiet sobs. Ethan breathed a sigh of relief and reached up to ruffle my hair. "Still, the wife wins," he snarled, jabbing viciously at the little baby in his arms. "Tom, you little brat with no father in your eyes." I batted his hand away and murmured a teasing retort, "Childish or not, you're almost 30 and still fussing like a kid." Such a cozy, everyday scene stabbed painfully at Lucas's eyes, the veins at his temples throbbed. "Lynn, have you finished acting yet?" Hearing his voice, and remembering Tom's sobs, I felt a surge of irritation and said coldly, "Have you finished being crazy?" Ethan turned around and tipped the brim of his cap up. "Wife, do you know him?" Lucas looked at him, eyes full of malice. As if sensing that gaze, Ethan lifted his head and the aura around him chilled by 3 degrees. He swept his gaze over Ethan from head to toe, then slowly spoke, "Lynn, he's not your husband, is he? How much do you hate me to find someone to deceive me, to cover it up so tightly, afraid I'll notice anything? Is the child in your arms an extra prop of yours?" I was about to speak when Ethan quietly stepped in front of me, shielding Tom and me. He shed the flippant tone he'd used moments ago, his words were full of severity. "Sir, did you just run away from a psychiatric hospital, you madman?" He spoke with such seriousness it infuriated Lucas, who forced out a few words through his teeth. "What did you say?" Ethan chuckled lightly, "Didn't expect you still can't understand what people are saying." "Sir, we don't have time to entertain you, the food at home is getting cold, and I can't bear to let my wife eat cold dishes." A colder light filled Lucas's eyes as he pushed Ethan aside. "Lynn, let's talk." But the next second he was grabbed by the collar by Ethan and slammed against a pillar, utterly unable to fight back. Yet his mouth stayed sharp. "Lynn, is this the actor you found? Ugly would be one thing, but rude on top of that." But the next second he froze. Ethan dialed a number. "Dean William, it's me. You have a patient named Lucas at your hospital, right? Please add him to surgery, 1 in 10 minutes. His pupils flashed abruptly. "Lucas? Could it be that Ethan? Impossible. How could Lynn possibly have had contact with someone so important?" But the next second, a phone in his pocket rang. He hung up with a sullen face, utterly unwilling. Ethan released his collar, took out some alcohol and sprayed his palms. He was about to turn away when he heard Lucas behind him say, "Do you know Lynn once proposed to me?" "More than once." Ethan's steps faltered for a moment, but he only paused briefly before looping his arm around me and walking on. Yet even if he pretended calm, the sudden tightening of the hand around my waist betrayed what he felt. I let out a long sigh. To keep my waist intact for tonight, I might as well settle this now. I shoved the child into Ethan's arms and, under the scorching look of his jealousy, walked up to Lucas and slapped him hard. He wiped the corner of his mouth, saw the blood on his fingertips, and looked utterly incredulous. "Lynn, you hit me." His eyes churned with countless sorrows. "Yes, this slap is the price for you scaring my son to tears. I did indeed propose to you, but who hasn't been blind a few times when they're young? If it weren't for your leaving, I wouldn't have met such a wonderful husband. I forgot to tell you earlier, the ring you just bought is still very small, it isn't worth my husband's 10 minutes of pay. And finally, my husband wore a mask not because he's ugly, but to protect me and the child, something a self-centered person like you will never understand. Lucas, if you keep bothering us, it won't be as simple as one more surgery." It wasn't easy for you to get into Sheha, was it? The last sentence was a blunt warning. Lucas seemed too startled by the string of words to react. He stared blankly at the floor. After a long while, he managed to squeeze out, "Lynn, do you hate me that much?" "Yes. I don't just dislike you, I hate you, so you better stay far away from me." With that, I ran to Ethan, took his hand, and strode away. "Wife, you love me so much." Hearing that flippant line, I finally let out a sigh of relief. My old waist was safe tonight after all. But I didn't expect to be tormented even worse. Miscalculation. I thought that harsh speech that day would make him give up completely, but I never expected him to attend my lecture. Since I could no longer practice medicine, I took to teaching. From saving people I became teaching people how to save others. After just a few days apart, he looked a few shades more haggard, a dark bruise under his eye. During the lecture, Lucas's gaze never left me for a moment. By the time it ended, the hall was empty except for the two of us. He walked down the steps slowly, every footfall making me more irritated inside. "Lucas, what do you actually want?" He stopped in his tracks, his eyes darkening. "I just want to ask, why did you stop being a doctor?" Hearing that, I gave a sardonic laugh, then raised my right hand. "Did you forget? You told me to reflect back then. This is the result of that reflection." At my words, Lucas staggered back 3 steps, repeating over and over, "How could this happen? I didn't expect this. I thought she was a woman, 2 hits wouldn't do anything." A single flippant sentence buried all the efforts of the first half of my life. The year I learned I would never practice medicine, I couldn't get over it for a long time. In the end, I even took antidepressants for 2 years. Thinking of it now, the disgust in my heart had turned into nausea. "Lucas, if you don't want another slap, you'd better get out of here." His body went rigid for a moment. "I'm sorry. Actually, I came to apologize to you today. The day you said those things, I went back and asked that anesthetist about what happened back then. She said she only did it on Chloe's orders. I'm sorry, I really didn't know." Listening to him repeat "I'm sorry" over and over, I felt nothing inside. "You remember what I said, but did you forget I also said that belated justice is bullshit? Or do you think your light little 'I'm sorry' now can buy back my hand?" Lucas glanced at the scar on my wrist, and a sharp pain crossed his eyes. "Lynn, can you give me another chance? Didn't you say people make mistakes when they're young? I was deceived by Chloe then. She was a good girl in college, I didn't know she could turn out so bad." Slap. A searing hand fell across his face. "Lucas, you can go ask the anesthetist everything now. Why wasn't it allowed back then? Was it not allowed, or did you not want to?" Lucas shook his head frantically, gripping my arm. "I just suddenly thought about that pile of bottles at home. After all, you never used to drink, and then of all times you started drinking during that period. Lucas, you know I only started drinking around then." He stared up at me in daze, not understanding what I meant. I brushed his hand away and said coldly, "I drink because I'm heartbroken. Every bottle in the house has your name on it." After saying that, I picked up my bag and headed for the door. Then I heard a thud behind me. Lucas had dropped to his knees. His voice broke into a sob. "Lynn, I really do like you. You don't know how I've lived these past 3 years, every single moment without you has been so hard to endure." Hearing that anguished plea, I still didn't turn around. I only said to him, "Lucas, did you ever really not love Chloe? The ring I threw away wasn't because I was sulking, nor because the diamond was small, but because it was too big. Even if I wanted to wear it, it would slip right off my finger. You're not an idiot, you should understand what I mean, so please stop bothering me." That was the final warning back then, and it still stands. After saying that, I left. I didn't see Lucas's expression, but the sobs echoing down the corridor were enough to tell me how he was. Outside the teaching building, a familiar Ferrari was parked at the gate. The moment I got in, the mood turned wrong. It felt cold, very cold. "Honey, aren't you going to help me fasten my seatbelt?" Ethan hummed, turned his head, and was about to lean over to reach for the belt. The next second, he had me pressed tightly into his arms. "Honey, what's wrong with you?" He buckled the seatbelt, his ears flushed, but his expression remained sour. I even saw him walk into the school. "Did he come to bother you again?" "Yeah." Hearing my affirmative reply, Ethan's prepared speech suddenly got stuck in his throat. "What did he say?" "The same things as last time, asking for forgiveness, wanting to marry me." Ethan snorted, eyes full of mockery. "Really no new tricks," the same old lines spun around. "So what about you? What do you say?" I watched his hands tighten on the steering wheel, a smile rising in my eyes. I say I'll think about it some more." No sooner had the words left my mouth than a pair of large hands tilted my chin up. "Say it again." I said. "Ethan, I love you too, I love only you. If you hadn't taken me in when I was left on the streets back then, I probably would have given up on myself. After I met you, I realized this is what being loved feels like, that having someone behind you is so reassuring, so." Sob, warm lips cut off my words, and only after a long while did he let go. "Chatterbox. I asked you to repeat a few words and you wrote me an essay. How come I never knew Teacher Lin was so passionate and uninhibited before?" His tone was flippant, always acting nonchalant, but I knew he had been uneasy from the moment he first saw Lucas. He kept smoking by the window in melancholy, and saying strange things to Tom. Also started reading melodramatic novels. What if my wife's first love comes back and doesn't want me anymore? Ethan is really so adorable. What are you thinking about? Who are you thinking of? The person in front of me. I don't believe you. Prove it to me. Saying that, he pulled a row of condoms out of the car's compartment. Once you've used them, I'll believe you. I flushed, shoved him away hurriedly, and murmured, "This is inside the car." "So what? It's not like my family's place is that pauper's flat, this is a villa. We even have a private parking lot." So I gave in, and he believed me. After that day, Lucas never came looking for me again. Whether his heart had truly died or he was frightened off by those threats, I breathed a sigh of relief. Later I heard he spent a lot of money hiring detectives to track Chloe down. I don't know what happened, only that Chloe was hospitalized, badly injured. I didn't think much about it, as long as he didn't bother me, it was fine. My back injury was getting worse and worse. 3 months later, on my birthday, a cup of coffee and a small cake were left at my door. A heart-shaped sticky note was still stuck to the coffee. On it was written, "Happy birthday. I hope you have a lifetime of happiness." I crumpled the note and tossed it, along with the rest, into the trash. Then I ran toward my happiness.